Not a day goes by that I don't have 5 clinics bugging me for AI integrations and AI tooling. So we're very cognizant of how AI is going to work in healthcare and what's going to come under regulation, what's not going to come under regulation, what's going to benefit your clinic.
Hey everybody, what's going on? As promised, I have the fortunate pleasure to sit down with Gabe from ChiroHD today. We're going to talk everything chiropractic EHRs and probably some things that are going to take you by surprise in terms of what a EHR system can do in your practice and how it can streamline operations. Gabe, thanks so much for taking some time today and chatting.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on here.
It is my pleasure. I was talking pre-roll with you a little bit. I was talking about a mutual friend, Dr. Eric Kowalski with SCED, chatting with him earlier today, and he has the unique insight of seeing when practices go from one EHR to another. And he mentioned that he sees a lot of docs moving over to ChiroHD. So I guess we'll just kick it off right there. Why do you think that is? What are some of the foundational elements of ChiroHD that you think docs should really pay attention to?
I think if you look at what's happened to the chiropractic EHR market over the last, 5-6 years, specifically the last 5-6 years, but really the last 10 years, is you just see a lot of consolidation. A lot of people have seen companies like ChiroTouch be bought and sold, and companies that people sign up for disappear. And a lot of people not incorporating a lot of technologies. So you'll see you sign up for an EHR, then realize you have to buy another service for texting, or another service for patient app management, or another service for insurance. There's just so many pieces. We see a lot of clinics that are paying for 3 or 4 distinct EHRs to manage their CRM, their EHR, their patient management, their texting, their reviews. So I think one thing that's really different about us is that we've always tried to pull all of that together as much as possible. And I think that's a really unique thing in the market where we really do try to do it all. I think that's a big piece of it. I also think we try to be on the what we call the bleeding edge of technology, right? We don't want to sit in this place of 10 years old technology that feels the same. And we're always looking for new ways to incorporate things. We're looking at a lot of AI options right now, a lot of ways to incorporate some of the bleeding edge technologies that are coming out. And so I think all of those things are really interesting. And then just our growth, right? We're a homegrown company. We didn't start with a big fund and all that. And we've gone through a few fundraises now, but we've gone from a team of 4 or 5 people 3 years ago to, coming up on 50 employees and growing. And we're really one of the few that's really still closely tied to the chiropractic market too, where we care a lot about what's happening in chiropractic, and we're really mission aligned with the industry, which I don't think you see as much anymore.
There's no doubt about that. And that's something that actually came up in the conversation I had with Dr. Eric earlier. And I want to dive into something that I know also is important to you, which I think many docs might find a little bit surprising. And that's around the data and how that data can be used to highlight who we are and what we do. Often when docs hear of data in the EHR, they think of some important things, which is reporting on numbers, right? Revenue numbers and things like that, the financials of the business. But data can go a lot deeper than that. And I know that's been something that has had a high degree of interest at ChiroHD over a long period of time. So maybe I'll just open the floor to you and just maybe speak into that a little bit. How does data fit into this? How do you hope to use potentially data in the future? And where does that fit into the mission-driven aspects of what you previously described?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think people who have been close to ChiroHD and kind of have heard some of these things, I will just openly say a lot of this we haven't gotten to fruition, but I think the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot of this start to really click, which is really exciting. So I'm excited to talk about it. But when you look at the systems that have dominated the space for the last 15 years, I'll just use ChiroTouch as an example, just because they're, obviously one of the largest. As a server-based system, every single office has a different data set, and it's very, very, very hard to align. And what we would call do a data mapping layer, where we understand that when you say a 1 to 2 region adjustment in this clinic, it's the same thing as a 1 to 2 adjustment region in another clinic, which is much more complicated than it sounds. But when you start trying to look at an industry and understand what's happening on not just a single office or a single franchise or a single group, but what are the trends that are happening in all of chiropractic, and where are visits at, and where are things trending up or down? What's price per visit? Some of these things are really, really, really hard to understand when you don't have a true clean data set. And so I think when we look at that, from day one, we knew we were going to have a lot of people's data in our system. It was one of the first high volume cloud systems that was available. We knew we were going to have a lot of that. So we just put a lot of effort into making sure that we had a clean data set from day one, so that when we got at a bigger scale, like we could start looking at some of these things. And with the immersion of AI, it's only become, infinitely more important, access to clean data. And so that ties into all kinds of things, not just the data that you're talking about, reports and financials and visits, but how it ties into large scale research. We work with Life University's Research Center. We're trying to expand our imprint with the schools and colleges and figuring out how to feed that data into people that are doing research and analysis. So there's that big vision of like, how can we use all this data that's in our system to inform the people that are doing the research and try to clean up some of the efforts that they have, which is really exciting. The other big thing that I think is really important is if you've looked at what's happened from a marketing perspective, 10 years ago, there was 1 million chiropractic coaching companies, and it's still down. And there's a few good ones that are still out there, but they don't have quite the space. And so there's like this void of coaching that people are hoping like things like AI and data are going to help with. And I think we're really interested in using the data on a whole set to understand what's happening in your clinic. So, not to get too far ahead of myself, but maybe in a while, instead of you looking for a particular KPI that you're trying to measure, we really like to use the word actionable data, like where the system can just say, hey, this looks different than it did last week. Did something change in your clinic? Those types of things where we can identify things before you're sitting down on a computer to try to figure things out. Can we get ahead of insurance? Like, hey, this claim is definitely not going to go through based on what we see. Those types of things. Like, there's so much tied to that. It's hard to distill down into a short clip, but I will just say there's a lot about data that's really exciting, especially over the next year and a half.
I love it. And I think that this is a key component because there's so many docs that I speak to that are super frustrated with their current EMR, EHR because of a lack of clean data. So I'm going to say at a system-wide level, you understanding the importance of that, and then the individual chiropractor being able to benefit from the fact that it's been built there. And hey, we're always in that position of striving for better, cleaner, but it's so important. And I'm going to encourage everybody listening and watching as well. We're going to drop a link down in the show notes. So if you are somebody who has been on the fence about potentially making a switch, if you're one of the 90% of docs out there on an EHR that's frustrated with your current system and want to connect with the ChiroHD team, I'm going to drop that link down in the episode show notes. So please click over, have a conversation. A 15, 30-minute conversation could literally change the next 5, 10, 20 years of your practice as you build in efficiencies and see where they can go. So on that, Gabe, I want to ask you about who's the ideal chiropractor for ChiroHD. There's a lot of different kind of docs out there. We have docs with different techniques, docs with different volumes, cash, insurance. If you look at it and you were able to cherry pick and say, man, this is the type of practice we absolutely love working with and that love working with us. And you can give me a couple different archetypes if you love, but I'd like to know, who are some of those ideal ChiroHD practices?
Yeah, I will gladly say that this is expanding every year. Like, so this evolves with us, right? When we started and we first built the system, there's one particular, which I'm going to get to in a second, but as we've gotten more mature, built better systems, gotten further down the line, that the number of people that don't, fit a archetype is smaller and smaller. But I think historically, our bread and butter was always high volume, mostly cash insurance or cash clinics. That was where we started, and that was partly, it was what was driving people to switch to cloud. When we came out, there was only 1 or 2 other cloud-based systems, and none of them could handle a high volume clinic. They got really clunky and really hard to manage if you saw over 120 visits a week. So for these clinics seeing 300, 400, 500 visits a week, there just wasn't a cloud-based solution out there. And a lot of those clinics that are seeing that volume are just by nature more cash heavy. So that was really where we focused our initial effort, and we won in that space really, really well. We love those clinics. We love being able to optimize their systems. We also see that those clinics are usually the most ready to switch systems and to switch. They're looking for efficiencies, and they're excited to find something about that. So that was like the initial effort, and you can just see how it kind of would progress. The next piece was insurance became a bigger and a bigger and a bigger and a bigger piece. We went through some big growing pains on insurance as we tried to kind of go from, high volume cash clinics to low volume, heavy 90% plus insurance. And I think especially this year, maybe more than any other year in ChiroHD, we really started to hone in on insurance fixes and improving our insurance product. And now there was some people, and there's probably people that are listening that had been on a ChiroHD call that I personally said, we're not the right fit for you because we can't handle the intricacy of your insurance situation. Right. My job is to make sure that we are solving problems in your clinic, not introducing problems. And so I felt like we weren't the right fit. I was the first to call it out. I would say that probably by the end of this year, I will never have to say that to another clinic again, that we don't fit you because of our insurance profile. So that's an important one. As far as technique, we've never run into any limitations on technique. We work with every doctor, every technique. I will say, like, there's some techniques that we constantly get requests and updates for, then we're listening to those, we're looking at the market, and there's always ways to work around some of those things, but I wouldn't say the technique drives the product. It's more just trying to figure out ways to augment what they're doing. And also from our end too, we are also in a position where we try to encourage to people to be more similar, which is, chiropractic is a very diverse industry. And it's hard when you're trying to drive a movement forward when there's so much difference. And so the more that we can help people, like, hey, we've seen this work for a clinic like your size, and the way that you're doing it, we've seen not work really well. We have a lot of those conversations and really try to drive uniformity where it makes sense, but also encourage diversity where it also makes sense.
Yeah, that's massively impactful. And I'm just going to go back to what you said and make sure everybody listening gets that. When is the last time, I've never heard anybody in an EHR company describe ways that you're troubleshooting areas to make improvements in a practice and being able to help them understand how to streamline operations. And I think that's massively, massively impactful. You mentioned insurance being a big upgrade, benefits coming in progress, already shipped, and more to come. If you look back, I'm going to have you look back in the way back machine, all the way back 7 years ago, all the way to today. If you had to maybe cherry pick 2 to 3 features and benefits that you're like, these are things I think are super awesome. And I'm going to give you a little context. They might be things that are super obvious that everybody uses. And maybe you even pick one that you're like, we have this, and like 90% of our docs aren't using it, and it's driving me nuts because it's so awesome. What are maybe 2 to 3 items that come to mind for you that are really keystones within ChiroHD where you're like, we got this right, and it's awesome?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is integrated text messaging, and it's become more common now. But I will say, like, when we first released that, there was no one that had a true two-way integrated text messaging system. You had to have a system like Sked or ReviewWave or Zingit or something else plugged into your system. And almost every time you had to log into that other system. So you had your EHR open, you jump back and forth, and some of them you'd get emails back instead of text messages back. So just like that, having it all in one place. The first time we demoed it, like, got literal gasps from everyone in the room. And it was one of my favorite moments because anyone that uses ChiroHD, it's so standard now, it's not a special feature, but it was really special at the time. And that was just like when we send out text messages for appointments, we show a status indicator on the appointment with a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something. So as people texted in, you could real time see that everyone's confirming their appointments for tomorrow. And I think that was just something that wasn't even remotely on anyone else's radar when we released it. So that was a really big feel good win for us, and it became standard now. Now it's like, as soon as there's an issue with that and it goes down for a day, there's uproar, which there should be. But it's funny, it was something that was not even a consideration a few years ago. So I think that was really big. I think a lot of our early reporting was revolutionary at the time. And I think we're having to make that same revolutionary change where it was stagnant. Like, we rolled it out and everyone's like, oh my God, this is the best reporting I've seen forever. And then reporting evolved over the last 3 or 4 years. So now we're having to make another big push for it. But our early reporting dashboards, we have a feature called Health Check, which tries to find we talked about, like, making your clinic more efficient, being a partner in your practice and not just an EHR. That health check was like, these are mistakes that we see every clinic make, putting in duplicate charges, marking appointments completed when charges haven't gone in, putting charges that are supposed to bill out to insurance on a case with no insurance profile, or some of these things that just are really common. We have this health check system that checks across all of those. A lot of times you'll see those systems just for strictly insurance, what we call green sheets in our system, but it's just the idea of like, oh, this can't bill to insurance because they don't have a date of birth. We take that further and we're like, this just is not being done right. You didn't complete a SOAP note. You didn't add charges here. You duplicated charges here. And I think that was something that was really new at the time, and we're going to continue to expand on that. That's another feature I really love. And the last one I'll say was just bulk scheduling was also all these are like, everyone is so used to them now that all people ask for are like updates to them. But at the time, I remember watching someone do bulk scheduling in another system. I don't remember which one it was, but they scheduled out a year of care and they hit scheduled. They had the capability, and then they walked away from their computer and they came back 10 minutes later and it wasn't done. It's like, so it was just they could do it. It just took this long time. And, when we released it and you could schedule a year of care in a half a second, it was just like mind blowing to the people that came on board. So I think like looking back, like those are three things that are really obvious when we released them, were like mind blowing to people that came on board.
I'm not going to ask you to spill the beans, but I am going to ask you for a little preview. What are maybe one or two items on the horizon that you're excited about?
There's a lot that we're excited about on the horizon. I'll openly comment on one. I don't have to spill the beans. I would say if you look at where we've struggled the most in reporting, it's around ledgers, like financial reporting, and not collections, but we get a lot of offices that want really intricate details of reporting that really no system can do, but people just want it anyway. Usually we see this tied to complex commission structures, right? They've got an associate doc who makes 30% on people that he brought into the clinic and 20% on people that, like they've got all these different layers. And when you get into that level of complexity, it's really hard to report on. And when you start getting into really complicated financials, whether that's accrual-based accounting or double entry ledger systems or integration with a software like QuickBooks, most EHRs don't have a double entry accounting ledger system. It's a very hard thing to do, and it's usually that's usually reserved for a financial software. We're making some huge updates to our ledger system to be able to do maybe not initially integrations with things like QuickBooks, but those will be coming. We are looking at ways to integrate with financial software and to give you way more robust reporting around financial. I think that is a very open piece. I already hinted at a couple. We are actively working on several AI initiatives. Those I'll keep a little more quiet in terms of what those are going to look like and how they work, but not a day goes by that I don't have 5 clinics bugging me for AI integrations and AI tooling. So those are happening, and we are looking at them. We're very cognizant of how AI is going to work in healthcare and what's going to come under regulation, what's not going to come under regulation, what's going to benefit your clinic. We're very attuned to a lot of that and really trying to find tools that really drive your practice to perform better is really important for us. And then the last one I'll just hint at is we're doing a lot with patient retention, patient reactivation. We've started integrations with other CRMs that are really common in the space that we're getting ready to release to everyone, but we're also looking at internal tooling to manage those pieces a lot better. So I think those are three areas that are really exciting for us.
Let's say there's a doc listening right now. I got a feeling there's hundreds that are in the position where they might be casually looking for a new AHR. Everybody understands that there's a lot of pain associated with that change, which is often the biggest friction point. But what are some things maybe that you've seen behind the scenes? What would you say to that doc who knows they need to make a change, who's out there potentially looking, but keeps putting it off to the next month? What, being in the driver's seat yourself, what do you see behind the scenes, and what do those docs need to know?
First piece I'll just clarify, and I think you already kind of qualified it, but it's understanding like why you need to make a switch. A lot of times I get people that are looking to make a switch, but they can't really articulate what they're trying to do in their clinic, what problem they're trying to solve, which is where I always start with. And to my earlier point, if you come to me and you can't articulate a problem that you're trying to solve, I will tell people now is not the time to switch to a different EHR, because if you can't define your problem, then your EHR isn't your actual problem, right? So first and foremost, I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to those people that have a clear problem they're trying to solve. I think the most important piece there is that you have to make it a priority, is the short of it. We see this all the time where people hesitate, and then they'll drag their feet for 3, 6, 12 months, and then they switch, and every single time they're like, man, I wish I would have done this 6, 8 months ago. So you have to make it a priority. You have to get your team bought in. That's another huge thing from our ends. We try to help people transition quickly. And a lot of times what will happen is you'll have a doctor who decides that we're going to switch EHRs, but he doesn't get his team, he doesn't get them hyped on it. He doesn't get them to understand why the switch is important. And then we run into a resistance when we're trying to onboard with the team, and we can't get them to be as excited about the doctor in those changes. So I would just say, as a key metric, or as a key piece of getting it switched, you have to get buy-in from your team, and you have to get them on board early. But the change and if you are trying to solve a problem that you think we can solve, like don't delay on it. It's really, really important that you make those changes in your clinic, because they're not going to go away.
No doubt about that. So everybody listening and watching, if you want to have a conversation with Gabe and his team at ChiroHD, please click on down below, have that conversation. As he said, kicking the can down the road you always end up regretting the time lost between now and then. So if you are out there exploring better ways to understand the business of your practice, better ways in the patient management day-to-day, better ways in your accounting and financials, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Gabe and the ChiroHD team. Gabe, thanks so much for coming on and chatting today. Deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for checking out that interview. If you liked it, we have plenty more available. You can check out the next interview right here.